on my way to a country town in the Macedon Ranges, about an hour north of Melbourne. To find out why I'm going there and who I'm going to meet, you'll have to stick around. But first, let's see what else is on this week's show.
Shh, there's a sleeping giant down here. A giant pumpkin to be exact. Now, it's not ready to be harvested. It's still got a lot of growing to do. But that's what a lot of people want to know. When's the best time to pick your pumpkin?
I'm visiting a fabulous inner city garden and kitchen where some tremendous work is being done in helping feed Melbourne's needy.
I travelled to the Sunshine Coast to discover how an expat Kiwi garden designer has created an adventure in flowers and foliage set amongst the backdrop of native forest. It's very Australian and extremely beautiful.
When it gets hot, and believe me, it gets really hot and dry here in the Adelaide Hills, I need to water my veggies daily, if not more, to get them to survive. Now that's a bit of a challenge when I'm busy working or off travelling. So I've got a way that I can grow veggies and get them to survive on just once a week watering, even in the hottest weather. Now I'm doing this using wicking beds. I've made wicking beds before out of old apple crates, but the challenge with them is they have a limited life. The new style of wicking bed I'm building is out of intermediate bulk containers, known as IBCs. These are purchased from my local transport company for about $150 each, but I get 2 beds out of them. It's important to know the history of use of your container. These are food-grade plastic. They've been used to transport olive oil or wine and not chemicals. And best of all, they're going to last a really long time. First off, cut the IBC in half. Now to do this, I'm using an angle grinder, which creates quite a few sparks. So make sure you use the proper safety equipment. The angle grinder cuts through both the metal frame and the plastic, but it's a bit fiddly and it takes a bit of time. Once you've separated the 2 halves, undo the screws that hold the metal cage to the plastic tank. This enables me to turn the cage upside down so the sharp cut edges are facing down and the top edge is nice and smooth and isn't a hazard. Now this is half of what I've just cut. It still needs to be rinsed and I need to level it, and the other half still in the shed needs some more work on the frame, but this one's levelled, ready to go. First off, you need to put an overflow point in. In my previous wicking beds, I've done it where the soil layer joins the reservoir layer. But what I've actually found is by putting it right down the bottom, it gives you more flexibility. I've used proper irrigation fittings and silicone them in. That's going to give me longevity and make sure that this doesn't leak. And then by adding this elbow, it gives me the ability to be able to drain all the water out of the reservoir layer if I want to, say in the middle of winter. When it's upright, it drains at the normal overflow point. Cover the base with a thin layer of scoria. Now I'm adding the inlet pipe. It's simply a piece of PVC pipe cut to length, and I've slotted it into some agricultural drain. That's slotted pipe, and what this does is allow the water to come out evenly in the bottom of the reservoir layer. I'm securing it in place with a couple of bricks. I'll take them out once I fill it properly. Finish filling the reservoir layer with scoria to cover the ag pipe and level it off. Make sure you leave about 30 centimetres above the top of the scoria so the soil layer can wick properly. In between the scoria and the soil, I put down a sheet of geotextile fabric, and that will stop the soil from going down and clogging the reservoir layer. For the soil mix, I'm using a blend of good organic soil and compost. The wicking action will only work properly if there's a high proportion of organic matter. And now it's finally full, I can have some fun planting. I'm actually going to plant some repeat harvest lettuces, and they love being kept moist, and so they're perfect for wicking beds. Once I've planted the lettuces, you need to fill the reservoir, and how you know when it's full is it will flow out of the overflow point. As well as that, you need to thoroughly saturate the soil from above first off. And I would be aware that with young plants, for the first couple of weeks, I'd still water from above because sometimes their root systems are too small to be able to start the wicking process properly. Then, once established, most plants will tolerate just to top up about once a week in summer. How you know when to top up is simply to look in the overflow point, and if the water's run out, you know you need to fill the reservoir. Now obviously we need to mulch, just like we would in the garden, to stop the top of the soil from drying out. I'm also going to put some wooden boards on them. This insulates the bed, but it also makes them look nicer. I've still got several more wicking beds to make, but why don't you have a go at making a wicking bed from an IBC? It's a great way to grow veggies in a hot, dry climate. Happy wicking!
There's a sleeping giant down here. A giant pumpkin to be exact. Now it's not ready to be harvested, it's still got a lot of growing to do, but that's what a lot of people want to know. When's the best time to pick your pumpkin? The first thing to look out for is the plant dying off. This is an indicator that it's gone through its cycle and it's the end of the season. Once you've got your fruit, there's a few ways to test if it's ripe. First, you can give it a good little knock. If it sounds hollow, it's a good indicator of ripeness. Also, the colour of the fruit. If it's coloured up nicely and the skin is starting to form warts, then that's a good sign of maturity as well. You can also give the neck a bit of a sniff. If it's smelling nice and pumpkiny, that's also a good sign. When you harvest, it's a good idea to harvest with a handle. Now, it's a bit of a misnomer to call it a handle because you should never transport it that way. You'll rip the top out of the pumpkin. And when you store them, don't be tempted to store them flat on their base. This way, moisture will collect around the neck and the fruit can rot. So always store them on their side. That way the moisture can escape. This way, the fruit will store for a lot longer. Now this has a couple of weeks left in it, so I'm going to come back when it's bigger and better.
I'm driving to the home of our newest Gardening Australia presenter. She's a good friend, and look, you probably know her name because it's been appearing at the back end of the show for years. Jane Edmondson visited her at her rented digs about 4 years ago.
Millie, you obviously really like recycling and salvaging stuff.
Well, there's stuff everywhere, Jane. You keep your eyes open and you can find all sorts of amazing things to use in the garden.
This, for instance.
Well, it's just sticks, you know.
Meet Millie Ross, broadcaster, author, and for almost a decade, senior researcher at Gardening Australia. Millie's superpower is that she can create gardens out of next to nothing, for next to nothing. The horticultural equivalent of spinning straw into gold. So after a leisurely drive through some lovely countryside, I finally arrive at a classic Victorian town, home to a botanical garden, historic houses, fine restaurants, and now Millie Ross. Millie's probably best described as a compulsive gardener, and I'm really keen to check out a new place because after 20 years of renting, she's finally bought her first home. Hello, Squid. How are you? It's nice to come and visit your place. Where's Millie?
Come on, Costa. Come to have a look at the jungle. Oh. Well, not quite a jungle yet, but getting there.
Great. What was here when you first arrived?
Not much. There was a tank over there and a garden bed, and so I had a working bee for my birthday. It's the best way to get stuff done. We tore it all to pieces because it's only a really little space, so I want to use every single inch of it over time. But, you know, full west this way, full north this way, needed some shelter, so I built the brick and stick pergola. All it is broken concrete and gravel. Actually, this is the timber from the Secret River mini-series log cabin that was built in the studios downstairs in the ABC. Being the stingy gardener, the guys who do the sets and stuff always come and ask me if I want the leftover straw or whatever.
Now,
I say, what have you got?
You gave us a little bit of a clue there, a stingy gardener. How would you describe yourself?
I like gardening way more than I like going to the shops. You can grow a plant in anything really, can't you? Anything you find.
With the backyard theoretically under control, I was more than happy to help with something far more concrete out front.
Well, Costa, I am stoked you're here because I've got a bit of paving to do and I know you're the master paver. So, choice of granite, basalt around the area. So I've chosen broken concrete that I found on the side of the road.
The first job was to create a level surface to lay the pavers on. Just want to run this string out, Millie.
Yep. Measure out, yep.
You're right on 200, that's pretty good. 150, 190, yeah, so
All
we've
right, keep going.
got a bit to go.
Oh, I might use that.
That's probably 100 years old.
Could be. There's not one hole you dig that you don't find a treasure, is there?
Yeah. Bit more, about a metre. That'll do. In order to create a stable base for the pavers, we put down a layer of crushed rock and rubble. If you ever find yourself creating a random paving pattern, I recommend playing around with the stones until you're happy with the arrangement. Are you happy with the stepping pattern?
Looks good. Should we take a picture?
Definitely. Then we can remember where to put them back in. There you go. This is the fun bit. Mix 3 parts of washed sand with 1 part of cement. Add water until you get the consistency just right. That's good, that's good. Well, Millie, that's it. All the pavers are in. All we've got to do is let the mortar go off for a couple of hours.
All right, well, should we take the dog for a walk?
What do you reckon, Squid? I'm keen to see what you've selected to plant through that entry.
Well, you know me, I'm a total plant nerd.
Yeah.
So
We'll be back later in the show to reveal what plants Millie's chosen to use with her paving.
Unfortunately, these days, there are so many people who depend on charities for their daily meals, and that's why I've come to FareShare in Abbotsford. I want to see how they rescue food and grow their own vegetables to turn it into wonderful meals for the needy. Kelly, you're the General Manager here. Tell me what FareShare is all about.
Well, at FareShare, we use rescued and donated food to make over 5,000 meals each day that are then given away to charities throughout Victoria.
So where do donations come from?
Well, they come from supermarkets, wholesale, vegetable markets. They come from manufacturers,
Farmers?
farmers, direct from growers.
It's not all vegetables though, is it?
No, it isn't. Meat, pastry, flour, dairy, cheese, butter, sour cream. We use over 7,600 eggs a week. Perfectly good to cook with,
Yeah.
but things that the supermarkets and the like don't feel confident with selling.
Yeah. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Because where's
it
that
makes-
going to go?
Landfill.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
look what you're doing. You're saving all this from landfill. That's
think that-
wonderful. I like the look of this. What's happening here?
So what we've got are all the bits of vegetables and fruit waste that we can't cook with. And this is going to go off to either the Melbourne Zoo, the Collingwood Children's Farm, or now we've got our own gardens, it'll go down to Abbotsford to be composted. So, and it will eventually make its way back onto our own garden beds.
So you've actually closed the loop.
Exactly.
FareShare produce their own food on 3 Melbourne sites, including this one at Abbotsford, built on old Vic Track land. Susie Scott is the garden manager.
So this site was used as a goods yard, and so it was really compacted, a lot of rubbish. We've brought in all the materials, put a layer of plastic down because that was our commitment just because of potential contaminants. So everything's above ground, everything's brought in. The idea behind growing our own food is the meals will always need vegetables, and if we can contribute those from urban sites where we're growing food, then it secures the fact that those meals can be made. And the focus for the gardens is to produce a yield that's suited to the meals, and that is high-yielding veg like the root crops. And then coming into spring, we're going to be planting things like zucchini, eggplant, those sorts of things.
G'day, Roger.
Jane.
Now, you're a retired gentleman, and so you volunteer your time for FareShare.
Yes, I volunteer 2 mornings a week at FareShare.
Yeah.
I work one morning in the kitchen rolling pastry to make quiches, and the other morning I work in the garden here. And it's a wonderful thing to do when you're retired like I am and you've downsized a bit. It's just such a simple idea, producing meals for those who need them.
I really love that these type of projects can bring together people in an outdoor environment. It brings people together in a way that is very special, whether that's just connecting with your community a bit more, whether it's learning more activities that you can take home and you can grow veggies yourself. I think it's a very, very healthy thing for our society to be doing.
Are they our homegrown babies, are they?
Yeah, I was there, I planted them, harvested them.
How important is nutrition to these meals?
It's incredibly important. We don't know if this is the only meal someone's going to be receiving for the whole day. And we need to make sure it is as packed full as possible with vitamins and minerals. And the best way to ensure that is to have a variety of vegetables in there.
Kelly, they are 2 very fine-looking dishes. What have we ended up with?
Here we've got a mushroom and leek ricotta pasta.
Yep.
And over here we've got a lamb, quinoa and vegetable casserole.
And it's fabulous to see. It's been an eye-opener for me to see how all of FareShare works. Is it really a positive thing for you?
Oh, absolutely. Look, it's a win-win for everyone involved with us, from donors finding a home for their food that would otherwise go to landfill, from volunteers making a positive difference to the community, and of course the end recipients, our clients.
I've travelled about 130 kilometres north of Brisbane to visit a garden near Eumundi, inland of the Sunshine Coast. It's a 1 hectare adventure of foliage and colour created and curated by expat New Zealand garden designer Cheryl Boyd. How you going?
Jerry, nice to see you.
The garden sits comfortably in 5 hectares of native forest. There's formal areas near the house, tapering gradually to informality before merging into the bush. Cheryl is a real collector. There's an extraordinary range of specimens here. There are some individuals, but they're mostly grouped. This lends impact, and so does Cheryl's use of foliage colour. I love this part of your garden. It's really dramatic. How did it come about?
Well, my favourite palette to use, the lime green and dark burgundy and black foliages. So you've got the limey green pilea, which is a real favourite of mine, amongst the black hemigraphis, layering up to the bat plants and ferns, to the black cordyline and costus in the background, and the very special Areca vesticaria.
Now, that is a fabulous plant because so many people go to equatorial countries and they want the sealing wax palm.
Yes.
But it just can't cope with the cool. That is the ideal substitute. You can grow that right the way down to Sydney, can't you?
Yes.
And I noticed just behind us, you've got a wonderful syzygium just starting to bloom.
Yes, that's one of my favourite natives, Syzygium wilsonii.
And what's happening over here?
This is my concrete ball that has got nice and mossy in amongst all the seedlings of this fernleaf tamarind tree, which is a wonderful tree. I use it a lot. It's a great small tree for suburban gardens, sunshade and great ground cover underneath.
And you cultivated this. This isn't exactly what you would see normally, is it?
No, well, when they get a little bit taller, I just cut the tops off and then you get that beautiful new foliage.
Now, this moss-covered ball isn't the only bit of fun you're having, is it?
No, Jerry. A group of balls down there that draw the eye down. And there's some stick sculptures hanging up in the forest and sculptures to draw people to and discover. This leads on to the rock wall that's part of my Kiwiana collection, sort of representing the koru, which is the tree fern unfolding. And over here I'd like to show you the Ficus damaropsis, which is very magnificent.
I bet people are always asking you for cuttings.
Yes.
Have you ever eaten one?
No, what's it like?
Well, it's a lot better than a Brussels sprout, I'll say that.
Okay.
You just boil them, dice them, great with soup. Well, this is a delightful spot for an intermission.
Yes, it's one of my favourites for a glass of wine in the evenings.
In many ways, this garden is classically designed, isn't it?
Yes, there's axes both ways, viewpoints at the end to draw people through, and then it just melts into the bush.
I love the way that Cheryl has blended the garden into the forest rather than fencing it out. And the timber cottage is a nice touch. It is made from a stringy bark that had to be removed to make way for the house. Are these grass trees originals?
They arrived in the post about 20 years ago as seedlings, 2 or 3 leaves, a little bit of root.
They're loving your care,
Yeah,
aren't
they're some of my favourite plants to use in design.
There's a lovely feel with these trees.
This is the more formal part of the garden. The tree is dominating the 2 spaces. It's Acacia javanica, and that frames the 2 areas, and then we've got rainforest trees coming around to these gorgeous crepe myrtles, the Indian summer range, the Natchez and Nakoma, white flowering, beautiful autumn foliage.
You're definitely a leaf person, aren't you?
Yes, well, they say good garden design is 80% green, 20% colour. Go, Jerry.
Your garden is beautifully designed. What does it do for you?
The joy and pleasure I get is immense, and it's not just a collection of plants. It's about the spaces that are in balance with the setting, and it's also the backdrop, the way it sits in the forest. It's beautiful.
I've been visiting the home of our newest presenter, compulsive gardener Millie Ross. So far, I've checked out the place and helped lay some paving, but now it's time to add soil, plants and mulch.
This looks good, Costa.
Yeah.
Should drain pretty well. A little bit of nutrient from the worm castings and the leaf mould. I reckon we're looking pretty good here, Costa. Time for the fun part. So, I've got a stack of local species to try in a little entrance garden. Do you reckon I got enough?
I think there's enough here to plant the whole suburb, let alone this little paved area. But yeah, talk to me about some of these different ones.
Well, you'd know that one, Chrysocephalum, the apiculatum. But what I saw in the bush this year through summer was this, it's Chrysocephalum semipoposum. So it's like an upright form of the plant. And it's just absolutely gorgeous, kind of holds those little yellow buttons up around maybe 50 centimetres. So I thought I'd put that together with the little native bluebell I found this fantastic little, quite rare Dianella. Was completely endangered and now they've pulled it back to just rare. So there's heaps of species to pick from. Sometimes it's hard to not choose all the ones that are in flower. Yeah. Some of them I know work because I've seen them in gardens before. Some of them I've never seen in a garden. And so I'm excited to have a go at this.
What's it been like getting to know the plants of your new district?
It's pretty fun, hey? New place, new plants. For me, there's something exciting about putting something in the ground, and even if it only lasts a season or even if it only lasts a year or two, it's still nice to watch it and get to know it a little bit.
And share it, yeah.
Yeah.
And as a finishing touch to the pathway come garden bed, a thin layer of gravel mulch.
Well, Costa, I reckon that's a job pretty well done. Thanks for dropping by.
It's been a treat to come and contribute to your new place. And you know what? I'm really looking forward to seeing your stories during the show this year.
Yeah, well, any excuse to talk about plants and gardens for me. And, you know, I just want to have a bit of fun.
Yeah, and look, speaking of fun and gardens, check out Dream Gardens this Thursday night at 8 o'clock on the ABC.
Well, in the meantime, here's what's on our show.
I'm back in the patch, harvesting the last of the summer produce and putting in some autumn crops. I'll give you the lowdown on growing the perfect Brussels sprouts.
These guys and gals are ring-tailed lemurs, and I'm deep inside their world at the Royal Melbourne Zoo. This place has been designed to specifically make the lemurs feel at home, and my job today is to find out how the staff have achieved it.
And I'm profiling an adaptable group of tropical plants, anthuriums. I'll show you how to grow them.